Welcome to the Recruiting Stories podcast, where we celebrate recruiting by exploring the stories of leaders and top performers by digging into their stories and understanding how recruiting has impacted their journey and their success. Welcome to episode 12 of the Recruiting Stories podcast. This week, we've got Tom Curee, who's the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Innovation for Kingsgate Logistics. Tom's awesome. He's a great guy. He's been in the industry for over a decade. Really focuses on high-level strategy and execution for Kingsgate and then for their clients as well. Love hearing his story. We get to talk about his recruiting story and how he ended up in transportation, which is pretty unique. And then we also talk a little bit about, just his expertise and, how transportation technology might look in the future. And really, artificial intelligence, how that's changing the game, and his view on, the need to combine both a human element along with your big data and your artificial intelligence to really find the perfect solution for their clients. I think it's worth your listen. I think you're going to enjoy it. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to Tom on LinkedIn, and his contact info will be in the show notes. If you got questions for me, want to talk a little bit about being on the show, give me a shout. You can look me up on LinkedIn or email me, adrian@cov3consulting.com. Talk to you after the show. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Recruiting Stories podcast, powered by Cover3 Consulting. This week, our guest is Tom Curee. Did I say your name right, Tom?
You got me, man. Yep.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. Tom is the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Innovation at Kingsgate Logistics. He's a veteran in the industry, been around for over a decade, moving freight and finding solutions for shippers. Thrilled to have him on the show here. And you're out in Cincinnati, is that right?
Yeah, Cincinnati. It's our stomping grounds, man. We've been here for, 35 years. So it's home sweet home.
Awesome. Cool. Very good. Well, I would like to start with, how you got in the industry. So I'm curious, for someone who's now at, senior vice president level at a transportation firm, have done some awesome things with Kingsgate. Tell me how you ended up in logistics in the first place, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I cut my teeth in logistics really early. My first job, when I came into the logistics industry, I was 19 years old. And so it's kind of a funny story. So my wife and I were in college at the time. My wife was in art school, and she worked a call center job, and she was driving pretty good distance to get to this job. And a lady who was going through classes with her said, "Hey, why don't you come work over at this logistics company that I work at?" And my wife was there. She started a job there. She was there for about a month before she came home. And she was like, "You would love to work in logistics." She's like,
Nice.
She's like, "I see the people. I see what's happening." She's like, "You would just love it." And at the time, the company had a policy that said, "Hey, husband and wives can't work together." They lifted it about 4 months later. And that's how I jumped in. And so really, my wife kind of drugged me into it and was like, "Hey, you gotta come, you gotta check this out. You're gonna love this."
Yeah.
And I did. Logistics is one of those industries that I think you hear a lot of people say this, that you kind of get into it and you kind of can't get out of it. You really you connect to what you're doing. You connect to the idea of problem solving and being able to influence some of these decisions that happen for our global economy. And it's a pretty exciting thing to be able to be a part of. And so that's kind of how I got in. Like I said, she got me interested in it. And next thing I know, I was hooked, man.
The wife recruited you into your career. That's pretty cool. I haven't heard that one very often. Yeah. Well, so did you have any mind or know anything about transportation logistics before she said, "Hey, you should check this out"? And maybe what route were you headed? And then, that obviously changed when she told you about that role.
Yeah. So I had always had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit about myself. I always wanted to be pretty heavily involved. I was taking courses on business management, and I was at the time running a small mom pop hardware store in my local community. And so I really didn't have any exposure except for the guy that would come deliver our products, once a week.
Yeah.
I'd go help him unload the truck. I mean, that
Right.
was it. So it was completely different. It wasn't anything that I was interested in. My father drove a dump truck, but it was never, when he drove a dump truck, it was kind of like one of those odd jobs that he had for a time period. If anyone asked me what he did, I'd never say he was a truck driver.
Right.
But so there was really no exposure to logistics, and so it was a very fresh experience for me, kind of coming in and learning from the bottom up, what kind of makes this industry tick.
That's cool. And from what I understand, I mean, that's where you got in, is kind of that almost, cradle to grave style of an environment where you were. What was it about like that that got you excited? And does that still, that kind of thing and that type of, I guess, environment, or, that initial spark, did that still kind of get your wheels turning today? Or, or is it kind of on to bigger and better things at this point?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things that really interested me about it. One was the camaraderie, to be able to kind of come together with the team, work with the team to solve a challenge for some shipper or carrier, whatever it may be. That was one of the things that that was of early interest to me. I love kind of being in the trenches and experiencing that. I'm a guy that's really stuck with me. A lot of times I will find myself getting in the trenches with the team, figuring things out, figuring out a better way. Before I was with Kingsgate, I was with a refrigerated carrier. And one of the things that I did, because I wanted to fully understand what they were going through, is, I went and lived in a truck with a guy for 6 days. And so,
Okay, wow.
You really learn and get a lot of exposure.
Yeah.
To go sit in a truck and, you sleep across the captain chairs to experience what it's like, and so we
no kidding.
That's always been something that's of interest of mine. And so the other thing that really kind of sparked an interest for me was, it was the first company business job that I'd been in where I saw the sheer reliance on technology. Again, I'm working in a hardware store, right? I mean, I'm selling nuts and bolts, right? There's not a whole lot of technical aspects of what was happening there at that time. And so I step into this place that literally I'm sitting in front of a computer screen in an office. And, at first I'm like, man, this is nice not having to load mulch when it's 100 degrees outside. Then on the flip side, I'm starting to see, man, there's a ton of value of really being able to lean into this technology, understand some of its capabilities, and really deliver value to a client. So, those two things, it got me super interested. And I think those two things, they're still with me today. They're still key things that motivate me and keep me involved and keep me excited about what's happening in our industry.
It's funny that you mentioned the loading mulch thing. One of my summer jobs in college for me was I worked at Lowe's. And so, I mean, I was basically the loader, anytime you needed a bag of mulch or 100 bricks or more, I was your guy. So I can 100% relate to that specifically. So going from, you were at a big brokerage, right? A top 10 brokerage or what have you. And then you moved to, if you said a refrigerated carrier. Tell me a little bit about, maybe that process or why you decided to go that route, and then maybe what then led to Kingsgate.
Yeah. So part of my journey was I really love to be challenged. It's one of the things that I value most in any of the work that I do. Is I like to be faced with very complex, challenging issues that I have to somehow resolve. I wouldn't say I'm a Rubik's Cube kind of a guy, but I like to figure things out, and I like to dissect them and rebuild them in a way that everybody wins. And where I was at, I'd kind of gone through that channel. I'd kind of climbed the ladder to the point where I was stagnant. I loved what I was doing. I worked with amazing people. I had great experiences, but I knew I was stagnant. And I just reached that point where I probably stayed stagnant for about a year. And I'm a guy that doesn't just say, "Hey, I'm bored, I'm leaving." I'm a guy who says, "Hey, man, I'm bored. I need something to do. I need something to excite me. I need something to energize me because I'm getting very bored." And after a year of going through that, it decided, okay, it's time for a new challenge. I'm ready for something more. And stepping into the refrigerated space and working with 200 owner operators. I mean, the problem I was faced with there was that the company had a 140% turnover rate. And so the recruiting director said, "Look, man, I can hire as many people as I want, but I can't keep them in the door. And so we're bleeding to death here." And so that was a huge challenge, right? It's a huge opportunity to solve. And so it absolutely excited me. And so jumped in, had a great experience there, learned from some really amazing people, got to, like I said, ride in the truck, live in the truck for 6 days with a guy, eating out of gas stations and truck stops. And, that 1 week I gained 5 pounds and I felt like death. It was awful. But I mean, it was a great experience, and I ran the e-logs. I was the guy manning the ship and understanding it, and, poured diesel all down my pants. And, the guy still calls me today.
You got the full experience.
Exactly. He still calls me today to talk about that. And so, so I immersed myself there, and it's actually a pretty interesting recruiting story to how I got over to Kingsgate. It seems like my family makes me switch jobs. It's really my family. So my younger brother actually had already been working at Kingsgate. And I think I had encouraged him to take the job many months before then. Okay. And as things would come up in the company, they would ask him a question. He would kind of come ask me because he knew my experience in the industry. And so we'd bounce things off of each other. And I was at his wedding, and I was kind of responsible for emceeing the reception. And I'm a bit of a entertaining. I like to talk. I like to kind of get out there and have some fun. And sure. I didn't know that a few of the owners of Kingsgate were actually at his wedding and reception, and awesome. Their controller and one of the owners, Amy. She came up to me and she pointed at me. She says, "You're going to be working for us soon." And I said, I just kind of, yeah, that's nice, and move on. And then it was a matter of months before we just sat down and just started talking about what do I like and what does the industry mean to me. And next thing you know, we were kind of aligned and said, "Hey, we want to do something pretty great here." And so super thankful to be working with the family. We're a second generation family owned business. And so to be able to work with that is amazing. We've got a fantastic ownership group who they care. And so it's a great place to be, great family environment. And so that's kind of how I landed over here on the Kingsgate side and what we've been doing now.
That's amazing. I want to go back to that a little bit because a couple of things stood out that I think are really cool. One of them is just simply that, there was some authenticity, right? Like you were in a place where like you were just being yourself, right? And you had a chance to, like you said, whatever, with MC or DJ that wedding. And so obviously you're having a chance to kind of cut loose and be yourself. And through that, I always encourage people to be themselves, whether, like if you're on an interview, right? Or if you're going into an interview in an office, because like you want to connect and understand if you fit well, culturally and personalities. And the only way to do that is to be yourself. So obviously there was a draw there for you.
Well, I think you're right, because I think, if you think about a lot of times in the recruiting process, whether you're the recruiter or the recruitee, both sides often have an element of buyer's remorse at some point. I mean, I've been in that spot where you interview someone, you feel like, man, it's going to fit the culture great, going to be a great fit for the team, fully understands what we're looking to do, feels really good. And then when that person walks in the door, you start experiencing a very different person. Yeah. And so all of a sudden you get this buyer's remorse, like, what did I just do? And I've been the same way as a recruitee, where I've walked into a company thinking, hey, this is what I'm getting. And then once I walk through the door, I'm like, this is wildly different. than I
Mhm.
expected and wildly different than what I was portrayed. And so there's authenticity is an incredibly important value of mine. And so, I mean, you're spot on, right? I was being myself. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I wasn't there to get a job.
Yeah.
I wasn't there, I was there to have fun at my brother's wedding reception, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, they were able to see me just being me, and that it really makes it so much easier. And so I think you're spot on that. Be authentic, be yourself. You don't have to, we've all got differences. We've all got these different elements of who we are. We shouldn't be shying away and trying to polish all them things up right before we get into a job interview. I mean, you want to put your best foot forward, but you need to put yourself forward.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's really well stated, right? I mean, just a chance to say, all right, you want to work with people that that you trust, right? Obviously, it'd be a great benefit if you liked them as well. But the best way to get to that point of trust is to be real with one another, and to be authentic. And the sooner that you can do that, I think the sooner that you'll be able to really say, hey, yeah, we're either going the same direction, right? And I can trust this person next to me, or that's probably not my person, right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But you got to get there. One of the other things that you mentioned I really liked, was, once they said, hey, you're going to work for us. Once you actually did have a chance to like actually sit down with them, there was like a vision being shared. And I always tell companies all the time, like, not only obviously do you have to like, post jobs and hope people, apply, but like when you're in the interview process, companies like, you always have to be recruiting, right? And part of recruiting is that I think is so important is just casting that vision and saying like, here is where we're going, right? Here is what we value. Here is whose lives we're changing. Are you interested in also doing that? And it sounds like that they shared some of that with you, and there was a heck yeah, I'm interested in that too. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer of vision casting. A lot of people will tell you I'm the idea guy. I'm the guy that's kind of got my brains out here, dreaming of the next thing. And that's all vision for me. We spend a lot of time investing in doing that with our team, and with people that may be looking to join the team. Is we want them to have a real picture of not just who we are and what we do, but where we're going. This is our ultimate mission. These are the things that we're trying to accomplish. This is how we want to service the industry. And those types of conversations, I mean, you can see within a person if it excites them, or if they're just kind of dazing out, glossing over, in really a short amount of time. And so, the fact that the ownership team took the time to do that with myself and even allow me to shoot some holes in that vision,
Yeah.
it really created a good foundation for the relationship that I think that we have today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, so tell me about where you are at today, right? So you're a senior vice president of strategy and innovation. What does that mean? What do you focus on, and how are you helping, shippers and your clients?
Yeah. So we kind of started off a mission a couple years ago, where we were really taking another look at the company. Again, we're second generation family owned business, and we've got third generation family members that are here. And legacy is an important foundational aspect of who we are. So, the ownership team was saying, hey, look, we need to figure out what does Kingsgate look like going forward. We had tried some different things. We had experimented with some different opportunities within the marketplace. It wasn't a great culture fit. We are a very consultative organization. We are passionate about connecting directly with our clients. We're passionate about being in the dock, in the warehouse, in the truck, whatever it is. That's who we are. And we found ourselves working in this transactional client base. It didn't fit who we were.
Mm-hmm.
From being in this industry, the turnover that's in that transactional based type of a system. And at Kingsgate, we talk about being a family. We talk about being the Kingsgate family. I mean, I've seen incredible things happen just within our Kingsgate family for each other, and how we've kind of stepped up and taken care of each other. And so, we really leaned into, okay, how do we solve challenges for our clients? And so we did a pretty intensive look at ourselves. We took about a dozen of our top leaders through a design thinking course to really start breaking down the way that we look at challenges and problems in the industry. We went from there and we did multiple interviews with customers and prospects in the industry and just said, hey, what are some of your challenges? What are some of your problems? And we learned just so much through that process that it allowed us to kind of transform the way that we go to market and the way that we actually service clients now. And, we've got a significant portion of new business that we brought on just in the last 12 months under that mindset, where we literally are bringing procurement teams and transportation teams to the same table together.
Yeah.
We do that through our technology that we've built and we've deployed. And so that's a big part of the strategy side of what we do is I try to really look at what are we doing and how can we make sure this business is set up so that third generation is able to be here and have a thriving company and be able to continue to leave this legacy that's been built from our original founders, Tom and Mary Beckham. So it's an exciting thing for me to be able to do. It's all dreaming, man. I mean, you talk about strategy and innovation. I get to dream up some of the craziest things and whiteboard and draw and do that, and then have just an amazing execution team who's able to take some of these crazy ideas and bring them to life in a relatively short amount of time. So I'm super fortunate to work with some of the amazing people that I get to work with.
Well, kudos to you and your team. I think one of the things that I think is so important just in development and growth, whether it be for an individual's career or for an organization, is like you have to self-evaluate. And it sounds like you guys said, hey, we've got to figure out where we are today to make sure we're going the direction that we want to go. And I just think that's so crucial to say, hey, let's be really honest with ourselves where we're at right now. And once we know that, then we can make a realistic plan for where we want to go and how we can serve both our people who work for us and our clients. I think that's a really cool thing. So as well, I wanted to ask you, I mean, I was reading an article that I don't know if you had written or was about you guys there, but it really talked about artificial intelligence. Talk to me a little bit about that. What do you see as the role of artificial intelligence in transportation, both now and in the future? How does that change things?
Yeah, I think we've deployed a number of pieces of AI within our business. For us, it's been really about leveraging the technology with the experience that our team has. Look, this AI stuff, it's relatively new to our industry. It's not a new concept. I mean, it's used pretty wildly now, but it's still new to the industry. And you have a lot of AI players who are coming up and they're trying to do something unique in the space. And I love that. I mean, I work with a lot of third-party vendors who play in that space, and we're helping them learn and evolve and all that. But you can't just apply AI. You have to have the experience behind it to help educate the AI. I mean, if it's really going to become a useful tool, it's got to be able to learn, why did this not work? I mean, we run a pretty complex optimization engine that we run every single day on our freight. But I have a gatekeeper. I have a guy who has decades of experience in optimizing freight, who's able to sniff it, right? They do that sniff test and they say, hold on a minute, man, this isn't a good optimization. Yeah. And we've taken from that, we've said, well, what is it about it that's not good? And so we're gleaning some knowledge from this experience that we've got to help build in. And what it's really allowing us to do is help bring new team members up to speed quicker. They're getting some guidance, some direction based off of the data that we've been able to consume that, 15 years ago when I was first slinging freight, I didn't have a chance, right? I mean, I'm just literally taking a phone call and trying to figure out what I can do from there. So I think the AI, what it's going to help us more, it's going to help increase ramp up time. I think it's going to help give people a little bit more of that warm and fuzzy before they make a decision. which really, we've still got a person making the decision at the end of the day. And so, it's that blend of technology and experience that I think really can set a company apart if it's used in the right way. So there's a lot to be done with AI. There's a lot that's still going to be done in the recruiting space. There's a ton that's happening right now with AI, as I'm sure you know. And so there's a lot of fun things that you can do and tap into. And so, we're still novices, but we're eager to learn, and we're doing a lot in the space, kind of see how we can bring this into logistics.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems to me, just the idea of being able to use artificial intelligence to, like you said, I mean, if I can quickly crunch numbers and gather information that can help me make better decisions, financially and through personnel, whatever it may be, like it almost would be foolish to not say, hey, I'd like to see how that works. Yeah. Right. I mean, if you guys were explaining it to a shipper, just kind of from a broad level, why they should be interested in using something like artificial intelligence, or being able to use some big data there, like how would you explain that to them? How would you kind of give them a pitch on that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that's important. Is I think for a long time everyone has felt this need to give the perception that I know everything. And I'm one of the first guys to tell you, I don't know jack, man. I mean, I'm lucky that I have an amazing team that can turn ideas into reality, because otherwise I am the most useless person at this company. Okay. But you start talking about the lane combinations that are available. I mean, there's over 18,000 lane combinations that are out there. Well, for us to try to give the perception that single account manager that may be responsible for that, and his group and team and her connections over here, that they're going to know what's happening in all 18,000 lane combinations is absurd. I mean, it's just not reality. And so, we can, and it's a perfect combination of leveraging both, because we had a shipper who was interested in using us, and they were talking to 3 or 4 other shippers in the space. And they were really, really passionate about connecting to rate data quickly. And so, I talked to them about our ability to leverage data and bring it in through APIs and connect directly into their system. And they were really excited about that. Not a lot of people were able to do that at that point. And they said, well, can you help us out? What these other guys are doing right now is they're giving me a state-by-state matrix to tell me what their freight rates are right now. And we're going to kind of use that to evaluate. And I looked at them and I said, no, we can't do that. And here's why: because your market is about to go through some of the most significant disruption that it's ever gone through. And I pulled all of the information that we gathered, gave it to them in a presentation. It was pretty much an eight-page PowerPoint that said, no, I'm not going to do what you just asked me to do. Right.
Sure.
And at the end of that presentation, they said, you guys understand more about this market than anyone else we've talked to. We want to give you the business. That's and awesome. So it's about being able to leverage and understand what's happening, that a lot of people haven't done historically. They've relied it on the gut. And I hate to say this, but your gut is good and it's going to get you so far. But if you can combine that type of gut experience with the data to back it up, I believe that it's literally just propelling our team's ability to service the client.
Yeah. You still need and have to have the human element and the human expertise, but that data and that AI can enhance your ability to make right decisions or affirm your expertise at the same time.
I think a lot of people in the 3PL space specifically, they kind of got completely hooked in the last few years of the idea of becoming a digital freight broker. And I think a lot of people in this industry, when they think of digital transformation, they literally think of becoming a digital freight broker. And that's fine, but that's a very small view of what digital transformation is. I can guarantee you that as a company, we have gone through a digital transformation, but I can also guarantee you we are not a digital freight broker. We have elements of that literally play into who we are and how we service our carrier network. But we've not positioned ourselves in the market as we're a digital freight broker, and that's what we're here to do, because it's simply not what we do. We're very consultative, very, in the ground, in the trenches, experiencing what they're experiencing, and that doesn't happen if it's just a digital transaction in our world.
Well, no, that it's great insight. I relate to it from from a recruiting standpoint. I think if anybody has ever, had a few jobs in their career, you probably at some point have applied for, to work for a bigger organization that exists out there. And my experience is a lot of those big organizations, they have a ton of money to throw into technology. And so if you just looked at the recruiting side of things, and connecting this back to, it's just similar in transportation, all of that just feels really inhuman as a person applying for a job. Like, at what point do I get to speak with another human being? And do I even know if my resume ever has been looked at? And it might be efficient for them to like narrow down and use an ATS, some technology to get someone with a specific skill set that you want, but you may be missing out on, somebody's values, right? And somebody's, their work ethic and certain things that you can't really measure, through technology, and you're missing out on a ton of information that you need to make a really great decision. And that's where the humanity comes in. That's why people like me have a business, is because you have to involve the human at some point, because it's just so darn important to have that capability of saying, hey, this person would fit well into this culture. And I think the same can be said for transportation and freight. Some people need somebody to really look into their business and understand who they are, why they ship what they do, what change they're making. And they're going to be able to help them so much more than just simply digital freight brokerage on its own. Own two
absolutely.
legs. Yeah. Well, as we kind of wrap up, Tom, love talking with you, love hearing your story. Love that your wife recruited you into transportation. Like, that's my favorite thing so far that I've learned. But tell me, I guess if you're looking back, 20-year-old self, right, getting into transportation and logistics, like, what advice would you give yourself at that age, getting into a career in logistics and transportation?
I think the number one thing that I would have told myself was to read more. I came into this industry very young. I was pretty freshly out of school, and still in school actually at the time. And I think a lot of times that, you come into a new industry and you literally lose the opportunity to really gain a lot of understanding of what happens in that industry. I mean, we're really fortunate that within our industry, we've got a lot of great companies that cover what's happening in the industry. And if I would have told myself anything, I would say start reading more, start reading and understanding more of what's happening in this industry. Gain that knowledge so that you have a more broad understanding of what it really means to work in supply chain.
I love that answer, because it makes my next question really easy. What are some of those books that were really maybe influential in your life? Do you have like one or two books that you'd say, hey, I recommend?
Yeah, one that I really love is a book called Driving Eureka. Driving Eureka. It's all about the concept of literally finding those aha moments within your organization. And so it's one of those books that really excites me, that really kind of gives you a completely different perspective of how to look at a problem. And, they talk a little bit, it's a little case study-ish, you can learn a little bit about where companies have succeeded in that space and where they failed, and how to really work on your messaging to help communicate that. And so, because, when it comes to solving challenges, it's more than just being able to fix it. It's about being able to help everyone else believe that what you're about to do is going to fix it. And so there's a great aspect, which is all about that vision casting piece that we talked about, that I think is incredibly important. So yeah, driving Eureka would be one by Doug Hall.
Great, cool. I love that. We'll put that in the show notes there for sure. That's good.
Great.
Enjoyed the time with you here. If other people want to get in contact with you, whether they want you to move freight for them, they've got questions on technology, or just transportation logistics or life or anything, how should they get in contact with you?
Yeah. So the best way is honestly usually through LinkedIn. So you can search me, Tom Curee, Curee, at LinkedIn. And then if not, you can email me, tcuree@kingsgatelogistics.com.
Cool. And speaking of Kingsgate, right? If people are in the Cincinnati area, and I think you guys are also where the Dayton. You guys have another location. Is that right?
Yeah, we've actually got one in Cincinnati, and then our main headquarters is in Westchester, which is kind of right between Dayton and Cincinnati.
Gotcha. If people are interested in Kingsgate, I guess, one, why should they work for you guys? And then two, where should they go for information there?
Yeah. So, I think I spoke a little bit about it earlier, but the family environment that we've got, really born out of the idea of a family-owned company, is very unique. I've literally seen owners of our company replace windshield on employees' cars because they saw that there was a crack in it, and they knew that person had a young child, and they just wouldn't feel right about them driving around with a cracked windshield. That doesn't happen everywhere, right? And so, very unique culture that is really an amazing thing to be a part of. Where you can find out more is by just visiting us, kingsgatelogistics.com. You can see anything that we may have going on there, and if not, connect with us when we're out and about, whether we're at UC or anywhere else in the industry here.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you. It's Tom Curee, Senior Vice President of Innovation and Strategy there at Kingsgate Logistics. We appreciate your time, man. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Recruiting Stories podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on LinkedIn. Adrian Chapman and Cover 3 Consulting is our company page. Also check out our website, www.cov3consulting.com. Again, thanks for joining us, and we just simply want to remind you that you can change the world by putting people in a position where they can do the most good, and you do that by recruiting. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.